Welcome back, beautiful people, and welcome to We Are Cosmic. I hope you are all having a great day wherever you are watching from. If you are new to the channel, this is the place where we talk about crypto, finance, and digital assets in a calm, logical, and honest way. No unnecessary hype, no fear tactics, just real analysis of what is actually happening behind the scenes in global finance. Today's video is extremely important, especially if you follow Ripple and XRP. Ripple has just landed a brand new partnership, and this one is not just another headline. This is the type of partnership that quietly but powerfully pushes Ripple and XRP deeper into the global financial system. These are not theories. These are real institutions, real money, and real infrastructure being built right now. So in this video, I want to break down exactly what this new Ripple partnership means, why it matters far beyond just price talk, and how it connects to the bigger picture that is forming in crypto. We are also going to talk about a very important regulatory update, the Clarity Act, and why regulation is no longer the enemy of this market, but instead is becoming the launchpad for serious growth. And make sure you stay until the end, because we will connect all of this to what it realistically means for the future price of XRP, without exaggeration and without empty promises. Now, before we go deeper, let me ask you something. If you enjoy content that talks honestly about Ripple, XRP, and the future of finance, type an X in the comment section right now. It helps the channel more than you realize. Also, smash that like button and give this video a thumbs up so it reaches more people who want real information instead of noise. All right, let's get into it. Ripple has released a new press statement, and as always, I encourage everyone to read the original source themselves. I will link it in the description so you can verify everything. Transparency matters, especially in this space. According to the release, Ripple is deepening its relationship with a regulated broker-dealer called TJM by investing directly into the firm. At the same time, Ripple is powering TJM's institutional execution, clearing, and financing services through Ripple Prime, which many of you may remember was previously known as Hidden Road. This is a key detail because this partnership is not designed for retail traders. It is designed for institutions, hedge funds, and asset managers. Through this collaboration, TJM is now able to expand into digital assets in a regulated and structured way. That alone should tell you something important. Institutions are not experimenting anymore. They are building long-term systems. What Ripple is really doing here is embedding itself deeper into the regulated institutional market infrastructure. These are the financial pipes, the rails, where real liquidity flows. This is where trillions of dollars move, not where social media hype lives. And as more institutions move capital through these systems, the need for fast settlement, lower costs, and capital efficiency becomes critical. This is exactly where XRP fits into the picture. Ripple is no longer pitching ideas about the future. They are actively integrating into how money is going to move across borders in the real global financial system. And this shift becomes even more important when we look at what is happening on the regulatory side, which we are going to talk about next. Before moving forward, it is important to understand one thing clearly. The crypto market is entering a new phase. This phase is not about speculation alone. It is about infrastructure, regulation, and institutional adoption. And Ripple, whether people like it or not, is positioned right at the center of this transition. Now let's move into the regulatory side of this story, because this is where a major mindset shift is happening in the crypto market. For years, regulation was seen as the biggest threat to digital assets. Unclear rules, sudden enforcement actions, and legal uncertainty kept institutions on the sidelines. But what we are witnessing right now is a clear transition away from that old phase. A recent update from David Sachs is extremely important and should not be ignored. He confirmed that after discussions with Senator Tim Scott and Senator John Boozman, a markup for the Clarity Act is expected in January. This is not speculation anymore. This is a formal step toward real crypto market structure legislation in the United States. Why does this matter so much? Because for the first time, the conversation is no longer about if regulation will come, but how soon it will be finalized. The Clarity Act aims to define clear rules of the road for digital assets. What is a security? What is a commodity? Who regulates what? And how companies can operate legally without fear of sudden punishment. This aligns perfectly with what we have been talking about on this channel for months. The market has been slowly pricing in regulatory clarity, and now we are seeing confirmation at the political level. Even more importantly, this is legislation that former President Donald Trump has openly supported. He has publicly called for clear crypto rules to ensure innovation stays within the United States instead of moving overseas. This is a big deal for Ripple. Ripple has spent years building within regulatory frameworks, not outside of them. While many crypto projects avoided regulators, Ripple engaged with them. That approach was criticized heavily in the past, especially during the SEC lawsuit. But now, looking back, that strategy appears to have been preparation rather than weakness. With the Clarity Act moving forward, we have officially moved past the idea that regulation is a blocker for crypto. Instead, regulation is becoming a launchpad. Clear rules reduce uncertainty. Reduced uncertainty unlocks institutional capital. And institutional capital is what truly moves markets at scale. This is where Ripple's positioning becomes very clear. Ripple is not scrambling to adapt to regulation. They are already aligned with it. Their partnerships, licenses, and institutional products are built for this exact environment. When the rules become clear, serious players benefit the most, and Ripple is, without question, one of those players. Regulation also filters out weak projects. Many tokens survive only in regulatory gray zones. Once rules are enforced, those projects struggle. Ripple, on the other hand, thrives under structure. This gives institutions confidence to engage, knowing they are not taking unnecessary legal risk. And institutions do not move slowly once confidence is established. When capital begins to flow, it flows through compliant rails. This is why the timing of Ripple's recent partnership matters so much. It is happening before full regulatory clarity is finalized, not after. That means Ripple is positioning itself ahead of the curve. Zooming out, this regulatory shift is not just about Ripple or XRP. It is about the entire digital asset market maturing. We are moving from a speculative era into an infrastructure era. Rules, compliance, custody, clearing, settlement. These are the foundations institutions require. Ripple understands this better than almost any company in the space. So when people say regulation will hurt crypto, they are looking at it from an outdated perspective. Regulation hurts chaos. Regulation hurts weak models. But regulation strengthens platforms that are built to operate at a global financial level. One of the biggest trends we are seeing is real-world asset tokenization, often called RWA tokenization. According to recent industry data shared by Reese Merrick, this market has now matured into a regulated sector approaching $30 billion. That is not experimental anymore. That is a functioning market with compliance, oversight, and real institutional participation. Tokenization allows assets like bonds, funds, and other financial instruments to be represented digitally on a blockchain. The benefits are clear: faster settlement, better transparency, lower costs, and global accessibility. Traditional finance understands these advantages, and they are actively moving in this direction. At the same time, the stablecoin market is growing at an incredible pace. Stablecoin supply is up more than 50% this year alone, now sitting at roughly $310 billion in market capitalization. This growth tells us something very important. Stablecoins are becoming a core part of how money moves digitally. They are no longer just tools for traders. They are becoming settlement instruments. This matters for Ripple and XRP because stablecoins, tokenized assets, and institutional trading all require efficient settlement layers. Money needs to move quickly, cheaply, and reliably between different systems. That is exactly the problem Ripple has been solving for years. Now let's talk about ETFs because they are another strong signal of institutional demand. What we are seeing with digital asset ETFs is steady accumulation, not speculative flipping. Institutions accumulate quietly. They do not chase hype. They position early and think long-term. XRP-related products in particular have seen notable inflows since their introduction. This reflects growing confidence from financial institutions that XRP is not going away. It also suggests that XRP is being viewed less as a speculative token and more as an asset with long-term strategic relevance. Banks and financial institutions are also expanding their digital asset offerings at a rapid pace, and the reason is simple. If they do not adapt, they will be left behind. Global finance is changing whether they like it or not. Institutions that fail to modernize their settlement and liquidity systems will lose efficiency and competitiveness. This is why the current moment is so important. This is not hype. This is infrastructure being built in real time. Ripple is not marketing a future vision anymore. They are participating in the actual construction of the next financial layer. All of these trends, tokenization, stablecoins, ETFs, and institutional adoption, are moving in the same direction. They all point toward a future where liquidity must move faster and capital must be used more efficiently. That environment naturally favors solutions that reduce friction. XRP plays a unique role here. It is designed as a bridge asset. It does not need to replace fiat currencies or stablecoins. Instead, it connects systems, allowing value to move between them without delays or heavy capital requirements. When institutions scale up, they do not want capital locked in pre-funded accounts around the world. They want flexibility. They want on-demand liquidity. This is where XRP's utility becomes relevant, not as a theory, but as a necessity. The most important takeaway from this broader market view is timing. These trends are converging at the same time. Regulation is becoming clearer, institutions are allocating capital, infrastructure is being deployed, and Ripple is already positioned within this system. This is why many long-term investors believe we are entering a new phase for XRP, not because of speculation, but because the environment is finally aligning with what XRP was built to do. As institutions move more money through digital rails, the cost of inefficiency becomes expensive very quickly. Slow settlement ties up capital. Pre-funded accounts lock liquidity. Delays increase risk. Traditional systems were not built for a 24/7 global economy, but digital finance is. This is where Ripple's model becomes critical. Ripple focuses on optimizing how money moves, not on speculation. When institutions require faster settlement and better capital efficiency, they naturally seek systems that can handle large volumes without friction. XRP functions as a bridge asset. It allows value to move between different currencies and systems without requiring large pools of idle capital. Instead of holding money everywhere, institutions can use XRP on demand. This reduces costs and increases flexibility. Now, here is the key point many people miss. As demand for liquidity increases, the price of the asset facilitating that liquidity must adjust. This is not a controversial idea, it is basic market mechanics. If more value is moving through a limited supply asset, price rises to balance supply and demand. This does not mean price goes up overnight. It means price adjusts structurally over time as usage grows. And this is where XRP is different from many digital assets. Its value is tied not just to belief, but to utility under real financial constraints. There is a famous quote from Ripple CTO David Schwartz: "Higher prices make payments cheaper." At first, this sounds confusing, but when you understand liquidity, it makes perfect sense. A higher priced asset can move the same value with fewer units. That reduces slippage, lowers transaction costs, and improves efficiency for large transfers. In other words, for XRP to perform efficiently at global scale, a higher valuation is not optional, it is functional. This is why institutional adoption matters so much. Retail trading alone cannot create this type of structural demand. Institutions move large volumes. When they rely on a system, they create sustained usage, not temporary spikes. Now combine this with what we discussed earlier. Regulation is becoming clear. Tokenization is expanding. Stablecoins are growing. ETFs are accumulating. All of these systems require fast and reliable settlement layers. As liquidity demand grows, the pressure on settlement assets increases. If XRP becomes a preferred bridge in these flows, the market must reprice it to reflect its role. This is not about prediction. This is about necessity. Markets adjust to meet functional demand. That is how infrastructure assets are valued. Another important point is that Ripple is not fighting for relevance anymore. They are being integrated by design. Institutions are choosing systems that align with compliance, scalability, and efficiency. Ripple fits those requirements. We are witnessing a shift from experimental crypto use cases to mission-critical financial infrastructure. Assets that support this layer are evaluated differently than speculative tokens. Their value is linked to reliability, throughput, and cost savings. When people say XRP is needed, this is what they mean. Not that every bank must use it tomorrow, but that as systems scale, solutions like XRP solve real problems that alternatives struggle with. Structural dominance happens when a platform becomes part of the core infrastructure. Once systems are integrated at that level, switching becomes difficult and expensive. This is how traditional financial giants maintain their position for decades. The same principle applies to digital finance. Ripple's strategy clearly follows this model. They are not chasing headlines. They are expanding institutional partnerships, embedding their technology into regulated environments, and aligning with global compliance standards. This approach is slow, but it is durable. Right now, several major trends are moving in the same direction. Regulatory clarity is accelerating. Tokenization is expanding. Stablecoins are becoming settlement tools. ETFs are attracting institutional capital. Banks are upgrading their digital capabilities. All of this creates demand for fast, efficient settlement layers. Ripple sits directly at the intersection of these trends. This is how dominance is built, not by replacing everything overnight, but by becoming the most efficient option for critical functions. Once institutions depend on a system to move large amounts of value, reliability matters more than ideology. Another important factor is timing. Ripple has spent years building while the market was distracted by speculation. Now that the environment is shifting toward regulation and infrastructure, Ripple is already in place. Others are still adapting. When liquidity demand increases, institutions will not experiment with untested systems. They will choose solutions that are already integrated, compliant, and scalable. Ripple's recent partnership activity shows that this process is already underway. We also need to talk about network effects. The more institutions that use Ripple's infrastructure, the more valuable it becomes. Liquidity improves, costs decrease, efficiency increases. This creates a feedback loop that strengthens the system over time. This is why dominance often looks boring in the early stages. It does not explode overnight, it compounds, and once it reaches a certain scale, it becomes very difficult to disrupt. From an XRP perspective, this is important because infrastructure usage creates consistent demand, not speculative bursts. Demand tied to necessity is stronger than demand tied to emotion. This does not mean price only goes up, markets still fluctuate, but the long-term foundation becomes stronger with each institutional integration. Another key point is perception. For years, XRP was viewed as controversial. Regulatory uncertainty shaped that narrative. Now, as clarity improves, perception shifts. XRP is increasingly seen as an institutional asset, not a fringe experiment. This shift in perception matters. Institutions do not allocate capital to assets they view as unstable or legally risky. As those risks decrease, allocation increases. Ripple is no longer fighting for relevance. They are being chosen. That is a major difference. When you combine infrastructure integration, regulatory alignment, network effects, and liquidity demand, you get a platform positioned for long-term influence in global finance. That is what we are seeing develop right now. This is an important distinction. Marketing creates attention, integration creates dependency, and dependency is what builds long-term value in financial systems. Right now, the groundwork has already been laid. The rails are live. Institutions are showing up. Regulatory clarity is accelerating. This combination does not happen often in markets, and when it does, it usually marks the beginning of a new phase rather than the end of one. Ripple and XRP are no longer fighting for relevance. They are being incorporated by design. Institutions are choosing Ripple's infrastructure because it solves real problems: faster settlement, better capital efficiency, and reduced friction in cross-border payments. This is why confidence is increasing, not just among retail investors, but among serious financial players. Confidence is not built on promises. It is built on execution, and Ripple has been executing consistently. The idea that XRP is needed is not marketing language. It reflects a structural reality. As global finance becomes more digital, fragmented systems must be connected. Liquidity must move quickly between different networks. Capital must be used efficiently. XRP fits into this role naturally. David Schwartz once said, "Higher prices make payments cheaper." This statement captures the core of XRP's design. A higher valuation allows XRP to move large amounts of value with fewer units, reducing friction and improving efficiency. In a system built for scale, this matters. This does not mean price moves straight up or that there are no risks. Markets always fluctuate. Adoption takes time. Policy decisions can still create volatility, but the direction of travel is becoming clearer. Ripple is positioned where regulation, infrastructure, and institutional demand meet. That is not an accident. It is the result of years of building while others chase short-term gains. As we move forward, the digital asset market will likely separate into two categories. On one side, speculative projects that struggle under regulation and real-world usage. On the other, infrastructure-focused platforms that thrive as rules become clearer and adoption increases. Ripple clearly falls into the second category. For XRP holders, this means the conversation should shift. Instead of asking, will XRP pump? The better question is, how deeply will XRP be embedded into global financial flows? Price follows function, value follows necessity. We are entering a phase where digital assets are no longer just investments. They are becoming tools within the financial system. Assets that support settlement, liquidity, and interoperability will matter the most. This is why many analysts believe we have never been in a better position heading into the new year. Not because of hype, but because the structure is finally aligning with the original vision. Ripple is not trying to disrupt finance from the outside anymore. It is helping rebuild it from within. And that is why, in my personal opinion, Ripple and XRP are set to play a major role in the next phase of the digital asset market. Not as an experiment, not as a trend, but as infrastructure. If you found value in this breakdown, make sure to like the video, subscribe to We Are Cosmic, and share it with someone who wants to understand what is really happening in crypto beyond the noise. We move calmly, we think long term, and we stay cosmic.